Record on this computer. Okay. Let's see. Hang on, Terry. All right, now we're recording. Okay. Well, without any further, I'm gonna turn it over to Terry. Terry, you can take a couple of seconds to, or a minute or so, to introduce yourself, and then if you need to share screen or whatever, I got that already set up for you.
Thanks, Benson. I don't need to share screen. I'm just going to talk, but I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to talk story together about what a board does and how to run a meeting. My name's Terry George, and I'm a past president of the Rotary Club of Honolulu, and just really proud to be a Rotarian here in District 5000. We do a lot of amazing good work, and boards actually help that. So my board experience, besides running our own board, when I was president, I've been on a bunch of other boards. I'm currently chairing one board at Honolulu School. I'm also on the executive committee of two boards, HMSA and the Hawaii Business Roundtable. So I'll just speak really quickly about what a board is supposed to do for Rotary and in general for nonprofit organizations, and then a little bit on how to run one. And then I'll turn it over, or Benson, I think back to you, and you'll turn it over to Dell and Rich for fiduciary and insurance matters. So boards are actually really, really important for nonprofits and for Rotary. And I know that we're all differently sized Rotary clubs. Doesn't matter. The basic duties are pretty much the same. There's both kind of garden variety things we need to do. We need to approve. We need to set our budget, and we need to watch our financials. And we'll talk more about that. We need to approve members, and sometimes we need to have tough conversations if members are not, showing up or providing their dues. And that's something that the board needs to deliberate on first. We need to set our policies and revise them from time to time according to our club bylaws. We need to oversee our officers, which are usually for most clubs a president, sometimes a vice president or president-elect, a secretary, a treasurer, and a sergeant at arms. I'm really aware that there are so many people on the Zoom who have way more experience than I do, so folks, just jump in as you need to. We also need, as a board, to select and support our committee chairs. So that's the kind of stuff that we're supposed to do, but the real stuff is boards' jobs for nonprofits is to own the mission of that organization. We need to show a duty of care that we are actually doing the job of a board. We're showing up, we're thinking carefully about the mission and purpose of our Rotary Club. And then we need a duty of loyalty that maybe Dell's going to talk about a little bit, but that is that we need to be loyal to the club. We need to be aware of any conflicts of interest that go forward. But basically, my takeaway message for you is to keep, as you're running your board meeting, you need to do all these things, but you need to keep it real and keep it fun. Boards typically want to meet once a month, and there'll be kind of a season as you become a president and move into the presidency and move through your Rotary year. I would recommend getting an early start and have a board retreat if you can, and set some overall goals for your year based on an assessment of where you're at. And sometimes that assessment can start even earlier with a survey of your board members. And then don't make 10 things you got to do. Make 3 or 4 big ones. And don't just set the goal, but begin to lay out a little bit of a strategy. And that will make your board meetings more real. And as a president, you want to refer to where you want to head, celebrate how far you've come as a club, and then set out the work to be done. So you are kind of like the alakai. You are setting our sale plan for our club with the participation of the board and hopefully all of your members. And then you're kind of marking your milestones along the way. And do not forget to celebrate. When we get to have board meetings again in person, bring food, maybe booze, depending on the time of day and sort of your flavor, but keep it fun. It'll feel like a lot of it is just administrative, but it's really important stuff. And make sure as a club president, while you want to use some Robert's Rules of Order things, such as have somebody make a motion and second it, and then make room for conversation, and then get a vote, yay or nay. Make sure that there's a lot of time to have what I call a generative board meeting, where you're bringing up a question at the board meeting and you're allowing people a chance to sort of digest together and work on that issue and brainstorm together. You might want to set ground rules a little bit in case somebody's dominating the conversation. You also want to make sure that the quieter members of your board are drawn out by you, to make sure that their voices are heard. Running board meetings during Zoom is hard, as all of you current presidents know, and District 5000 leaders. But there are fun ways and tools to use to play around with that a little bit, such as the survey tool. Make sure people use the chat pretty actively, so that if you're running out of time, you still have a chance for people to weigh in. And as Benson's doing today, you can record your meeting. You also get a record of your chats later on. Make sure your secretary is keeping track of the key decisions that you've made, not every single statement that's made, but just your basic decisions. And then I think, again, be sure that there's space within your board meeting for the right way of raising problems within your club. My rule of thumb is, if you have a problem, bring a solution to, so that we're really going to be positive and solution oriented. And that's, Benson, in the time that we've had since we started a little late, I thought I'd just share those things. Luckily, we've been blessed in our club, as many of yours have, with great club board members and great club officers. There's one last thing you might want to do as a board president. There's above the board stuff that you need to do. A consent agenda is one way to deal with the minutes from the last meeting, and some other sort of pretty utilitarian things. And that's nice because you get a sense of progress early on. Get that stuff voted out of the way, and be sure, again, that you've got time to A, celebrate, and B, focus on the next big thing that you're working on. That way you keep your board meeting lively and real, and board members will want to attend and really feel a sense of progress going forward. I'm happy to answer any questions later on, Benson, when we've got time for that. But
Okay,
we'll have fun.
Okay, Terry, thanks so much. So because we've got a kind of a tight schedule today, what I'm going to ask you guys to do is to put your question in the chat. And then, Terry, you'll have a chance to field them if you want, or we can save them for the end. So at this point, thanks, Terry. That was awesome. I want to turn the meeting over to our former district governor, and somebody who knows a lot about boards and what they do, is our friend Del Green. So Del, take it away. It's on you.
Okay, well, thank you, Benson. And thank you, Terry, for leading us off with that nice primer on how boards operate. We're going to go into the weeds just a little bit, and what I'm going to cover fiduciary duties. And sadly, I have a little more experience in this particular area than I thought I'd have at this particular time, because I just finished a jury trial last week, Friday, and I won on a breach of fiduciary duty claim. So these things are real, and what we're going to do today is hopefully keep you from making the same mistake ever. So I'm going to share my screen here, I think, if I can figure out how I'm going to do this. Except
You're good, Del. We see your screen.
Okay, let me see if I got the right one. There we go. So here we go. Fiduciary duties. This is basically what we'll cover in the short time we have together this morning. What is a fiduciary? What's a duty? The basic types of duties, and is it true that no good deed goes unpunished? So basically, fiduciary is a very old word. It's derives from a Latin word. I'm not even going to attempt to try to pronounce it, but suffice it to say that the root of it is trust, confidence, and reliance. And that's the root of this particular word, and it holds true to today. So the word fiduciary is both used as a noun and as an adjective. And when used as a noun, it refers to the person having the fiduciary duty. But it can also be used as an adjective and refers to the type of relationship that the person has. And it's again founded on trust, confidence, and reliance. Remember, those are the same words from the root word from which the word fiduciary derives. And according to the Hawaii Supreme Court, fiduciary duty exists where influence is acquired or where confidence has been reposed. So, and then relief is granted. Anybody hazard to guess what it means when the court writes relief is granted, where there is a situation where influence is acquired and abused, or confidence is reposed and betrayed? Anyone?
Yeah, money.
Exactly. Thank you, Adrienne. It means you can get sued for it. So this is really real life stuff. There are three basic types of duties. You have a duty of care. This is basically one of the duties that Terry mentioned to us. This is a duty to act in good faith and reason, competence in the best interest of the organization, be it your Rotary Club, be it your club foundation, be it if you're a district board level member on behalf of the district, or if you're participating in some outside board, it's on behalf of that board, whatever the organization is. You also have a duty of loyalty, and this is basically a duty to act without self-interest, to act solely in the interest of the organization itself. And then lastly, the third one is the duty of obedience. And this is basically to abide by your governing documents and whatever the applicable law is. So those are your three basic duties. So we're going to talk about the duty of care. Is this the duty of care? I'm going to hazard a guess to say no. It's not a representation of the duty of care, which is basically acting, as I said, in good faith with the ordinary care in a manner of reason, person reasonably believes in being the best interest of the organization. Now we're going to see this concept again when we talk about the business judgment rule. But this is kind of your duty of care, the definition of it. And what do we do to make sure that we abide by the duty of care? Well, act in good faith, act in the best interest of the organization with requisite skill and care. Attend meetings, as Terry mentioned, it's important to attend meetings. And it's not just a matter of putting the fact that you're on a board on your resume. You go to meetings, you read the materials that are presented to you, and you ask questions. That's your duty. That's how you comply with the duty of care that you have as a board member, be it on your club board, you're on a district board, your club foundation board, or whatever board you might be sitting on. And then you, of course, have your duty of loyalty. So the duty of loyalty, again, is basically acting without self-interest, acting in the best interest of the organization. And how do we do that? Well, we pursue the interests of the organization as opposed to our own self-interest. Does that mean that you can never interact with your board? Say, for example, I sell widgets and I have really good widgets and I sell them at a competitive price. Does that mean that my club is not able to participate and buy my widgets? Well, the answer is no. Now, granted, you should recuse yourself from that particular decision if you happen to be part of the decision-making body that's that's dealing with that particular question. But you disclose the conflict of interest, you recuse yourself from voting, but you should always act in the best interest of the organization. And the last one we have, the third one, is the duty of obedience. And that's basically, again, following your constituent documents. So for your club, you've got your club bylaws, you've got the standard constitution, the club constitution. At the district level, we have the district policy manual. If any of you haven't seen that and are interested in reading it, just let me know or myself, and we'd be happy to share a copy with you. So you guys can know what happens at the board. Actually, it's kind of funny because just a quick side, when I saw the district policy manual and read it for the first time, I thought to myself, gee, that's why we do that. And that's because the people at the district level are good about trying to comply with the duty of obedience, which is complying with the constituent documents. And not only constituent documents, but also the law. So for example, if you have an organization or your club, are you paying your general excise taxes? For your club foundation, are you filing your tax returns? All these other things that you need to do to comply with your duty of obedience. Well, actually, I probably just explained to you how to comply with your duty of obedience, as well as explaining to you what that is. And so, breach of fiduciary duty. Well, first of all, you have to have a duty. You have to breach it, so you do something that's inconsistent with that particular duty. If that duty is a cause of some harm to somebody, they have the ability to recover damages. So we're hoping that never happens to any one of us, because we have, for example, the business judgment rule. Under this rule, decision makers are not guarantors. We sometimes make mistakes, and what's important is that we should follow the right procedures. And if we're following the right procedures and we make our decisions, we have some defense, and that defense would be the business judgment rule, where we're, for example, according to the Hawaii Supreme Court, we're acting in an informed basis. We're acting in good faith. And we're acting with an honest belief that whatever we're doing is indeed in the best interest of our organization. And if we do these things, we fit within the business judgment rule. So ask yourself, WWRPPD, when you're faced with these decisions, what would a reasonable and prudent person do? Now, is this a reasonably prudent person? I don't know, but reasonable minds might differ. So we've got the four-way test. And so I would submit to you that as Rotarians, we kind of have a leg up on this whole fiduciary duty and what it takes to comply. So with the fiduciary duty, with the first element of the test, is it the truth? Real quickly, anybody got any ideas of what duty of fiduciary duty this might touch upon? Is it the truth? Maybe it could be like the duty of care, that we act with being reasonably informed, right? Is it the truth? Finding out what the truth is. Is it fair to all concerned? Maybe this complies with our duty to act in the best interest of the organization, acting with the duty of loyalty, what have you. Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Maybe it touches upon the duty of obedience, avoiding conflicts of interest and complying with the duty of obedience and creating thereby goodwill and better friendships, and is it beneficial to all concerned? Maybe the duty of obedience, avoiding conflicts of interest and what have you. So as Rotarians, we have those a leg up, I think, on most people. So if we act consistent with the four-way test, I'm not saying it's the only test we should keep in mind, but maybe we're halfway there. Now, some other things. As we mentioned earlier, being on a board doesn't mean you're guarantor. If you are, for example, a corporate board and it's a nonprofit, you do have, for example, immunities under the Hawaii Nonprofit Corporations Act. You also have the ability to get indemnification. Just kind of keep that in mind. As Rich Proctor is going to touch upon in just a bit, you also have the ability to get insurance, maybe some insurance that would help you as a decision maker on your particular board. And the last thing I want to touch upon is information. I think the biggest thing you can do to help yourself is to help yourself by being reasonably informed, getting information, reviewing the information, asking questions, doing what you need to do to make sure that you're complying with your duty of care. And so with that, I'm done, and I will turn it back to our host, I think.
Thanks, Del. That's great. I saw actually the full-throated, like 45-minute version of that. So really skillful to condense it down into like 10 minutes. So really, Del, thank you so much for doing that. So now I want to turn it over to Rich Proctor, who is our district insurance person, to talk a little bit about insurance. So take it away, Rick.
Okay, Benson, I'm going to try to share my screen.
You got it.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to jump right into what kind of coverages are provided by the Rotary International program for all the clubs, the Rotaract, Interact, the boards, members, and so forth, all the regular Rotary membership people. First of all, we have two policies. Actually, we only have really two policies, but they include a lot of stuff that you're going to hear about real quickly. General liability, that's your first one that you should become aware of. And then the other one is going to be directors and officers, which is the policy that Dell touched on when he was talking about your fiduciary responsibility. So basically, who is covered in this policy? Volunteers and Rotarians, anybody who's going to be on a site or anybody who's coming to a meeting, with their acts in the course and scope of their duties on behalf of the Rotary Club or district. So you gather folks together to paint or to weed or to do whatever, and the volunteers are covered, as are the members. Now they're covered for the injury or damage that they do to third parties. Okay, now that's important because they're not covered for the damage or injuries they do to themselves. So for example, if a member brings a guest to a work site and that guest gets injured in some way, and they decide that they want to take it out against the club or the district, they are not covered by this policy, which is one reason why we request that waivers be signed for all the folks that are coming to help out for whatever you're doing. But you have a lot of coverage here for injury to somebody else and you also have coverage if you have to rent a premises or wherever you might have to go that requires general liability insurance. The good news here is liquor liability is included. We've used this also to generate fundraisers. So liquor liabilities normally come into play when somebody is drinking too much and they go off and they injure somebody in their car after the project or the event is over, and the club gets sued, and the RI coverage will come into play. There's also sexual abuse and molestation. We don't really want to talk too much about this, but there's no exclusion on the policy. So if somebody does accuse a member of that, there is coverage for that as well. Non-owned and hired automobile liability. So you have a volunteer that goes out and gets in a car accident. They're doing Rotary business. The club is covered. The district is covered. They have coverage under their own auto insurance, hopefully, and they're going to be primary, and this is going to be secondary for that event. Medical payments, this is what we call goodwill insurance, and this is going to cover up a limited amount if you just say, hey, look, Charlie wrenched his ankle and we'd like to, he came to the meeting and he wrenched his ankle as a guest and we would like to cover him. Personal injury and advertising injury is pretty esoteric. We won't get too much into that, but that's libel, slander, false arrest. And here we go to the directors and officers policy. Directors and officers policy covers folks on the board and directors for their fiduciary indiscretions. So there is coverage for you. There's a significant deductible on the RI side for this, but there's coverage for you and your club should somebody accuse you of being out of integrity. I guess that's the best way to put it. You like to call this bonehead decision making. You make some stupid mistake and the club is now somebody sucked a whole lot of funds out of the club because you weren't paying attention, and the people who have donated to go, why did you do this? And they go after you. So it has to do with money that was improperly spent. Employment practices liability, that's basically the coverage that you would have if you hired someone to work for you and they felt they were either discriminated against or they were wrongfully terminated, or there was some sexual harassment involved. So the directors, who's covered? The director, the trustee, the officer, the Rotarian, committee member, they're all covered under the D&O policy for their bonehead decisions or fiduciary indiscretions, which we hope we'll never see. And I don't know if we've ever seen it. Now, these are the things that are not covered. If you've got property, your club owns property, you got to insure it yourself. There's no crime coverage. If your executive director, walks off with the money, it's not going to be covered by the RI program. Coverage territory is everywhere. Commonly excluded. Communicable disease is a new one. Somebody gets COVID by coming to one of your meetings, they sue. The RI insurance ain't going to take care of that. What else? There's some limitations, and none of you, I think, will be involved in this. We were Rotary Club of Honolulu had to buy their own insurance for the construction of the Centennial Park, and because our project was more than $50,000. And that's pretty much it. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about certificates of insurance because, and I'll stop sharing. Certificates of insurance are something that you can get from the RI website, and I'll put that in the chat as to where you would go and how you would log in to get that information. Or you could email me, and I can put my email address also here if you need it. This last year, as you can imagine, there wasn't much of any need for certificates of insurance because people didn't go out and do things. There were no events. There will be, hopefully, this next year. So we'll need some certificates of insurance to be issued for these events, and I'll be happy to do it, or you can do it on your own. They're easy to do, and I'll give you that information in the chat. So the two things to take away is certificates of insurance are going to come next year, and waivers, if you don't have one already developed, there's the district can help you do one. Make sure everyone signs one before they go off and help the community, and that'll do me. Is that right? I'm good?
You are good. Rick.
All right, thank you, and I'll put that
Man,
stuff in the
that's
chat.
a speed version of insurance.
Whew.
Cool. You
Man.
got it. That was awesome, man. Like I also saw Rick's regular version of that, and wow, way to condense down like 6 million volumes of stuff down to 10 minutes. So awesome. Thanks, Rick. So like I posted in the chat, if you have questions, put them down in the chat, and if we have some time at the end, we'll address those questions. Or if you see them in the chat, guys, you wanna answer them in the chat, you can go ahead. So our last presenter today is Dean Masuno, and you may recognize that name because he is the husband of our current district governor. And I'll tell you just a really quick story before I introduce Dean. Naomi and Dean actually met in high school when Dean's job was to go around and explain Robert's Rules of Order to all the different high schools, and happened to show up at Naomi's high school. And so there we go. There was the genesis of power leadership happening there. So Dean, I'm going to turn it over to you. So here's Dean Masuno to talk to you guys about Robert's Rules of Order. Go ahead, Dean.
Thank you, Vincent. Robert's Rules of Order, like everybody, all the other previous speakers, is a lot to cover in a week. So 10 minutes, it'll be interesting. Okay, Robert's Rules of Order was initially written by Henry Martin Robert in 1896. The current version came out September 1st of last year. It's the 12th edition. It's 214 pages long. Okay, so I could go and summarize that by talking real fast, but you won't get anything. So let me do this. There are a couple of general principles and ideas that I think you should understand. And judging by who I'm seeing on this and listening to everybody else, the reason we want to employ Robert's Rules of Orders or something similar is because we have a fiduciary duty. We have obligations to our members to conduct our business in a way where everything is open, transparent, and has the participation of everybody involved. And Robert's Rules provides that. So when we deal with parliamentary procedures in general, there are 5 basic principles that come about. One is you deal with only one subject at a time. Number 2 is each proposition is presented for consideration, and it deserves the full and free debate by all members present. All members have equal rights to participate. The will of the majority must be carried out, and the rights of the minority must be respected. The personality and desires of each member should be merged into the organizational unit, and that is the function of the chair. And one thing that I know all of you already know, but it goes without saying, is that the chair must remain neutral in the conducting of these meetings. And I think Dell brought out the greatest reason why. It is that if it ever went to a court situation or was litigated, the first problem you would incur is a chair that was not neutral. Okay, now besides Robert's rules, there are many other rules, either claiming to be an interpretation of Robert's rules or is written to provide parliamentary procedure guidance. And every organization should adopt a version of Robert's rules and have that recorded so that if there is a dispute, because the different versions have different interpretations, have different quirks to it. And so if it ever came down to that, and it should never, if you have an official version that the organization has adopted, that is the safest way to go about it. Now, Robert's rules provides a guidance, a pathway in which discussion can take place. So when a discussion is taking place, it's important to listen to the other side. If you're a proponent, it's important to listen to the opponent. It's important to focus on issues and not personalities. And at all times, you should avoid questioning motives. And, most people in Rotary are professionals. And so being polite goes without saying. So generally, there are 6 groups of motions that can be made. The one that we should be concerned about the most is the main motion. And the other motions are subsidiary motions, privileged motions, incidental motions, motions on the table, and motions to propose to postpone. There are also other points that can be raised, points of information, points of personal privilege, so on and so forth. I have sent to Naomi a brief and a very brief write-up on motions and a table on precedences. So if you would like to get more information about how to deal with various motions, you can take a look at that. And that's a real quick and dirty kind of thing. The most important thing is I've seen Robert's Rules of Order used to manipulate, to actually take, it becomes a harmful mode. And, it is so disparaging to see how something meant to streamline, to make meetings flow smoother, is distorted into something where most people don't know the finer points of Robert's Rules of Order, and you have one person in there that brings up all these things and talks about precedents of motions, talks about that certain motions are non-debatable. It adds confusion. It causes people who don't know the rules to keep quiet. And that is exactly what you don't want to do. So as the chair of a meeting, especially if you're on a board making critical decisions, it's important to get everybody's input. And, as the chair, you should be cognizant of everybody's abilities, understanding of Robert's rules, and you should create an environment where everybody feels comfortable to participate. So, there's a whole bunch of things, and once we start going, we won't end. So I'll just cut it off right there. Robert's Rules is a tool for good, can be used as a tool for destruction. So it's up to the leader, it's up to the chairman to make sure that they maintain control, they understand the rules. So if you're chairing something, there are so many sites you can go to, there's so many cheat sheets and what have you that's available. So if you have questions, even later on, feel free to contact me, and we can have a interesting discussion about Robert's Rules and how it can be beneficial to your organization. That's it.
Wow, thanks, Dean. That was awesome. Now, I know I've been in literally hundreds of trainings, but I got to tell you, that's the most information I've ever seen put out in 40 minutes. So thank you to Terry, to Dale, to Rich, and to Dean for compressing down all of that information. Now, we got a few minutes, so if anybody has a question that they'd like to pose to any of these guys, you can either unmute yourself and let it rip, or put it in the chat. Kwanzaa had a question earlier about a template. Is there a template for liability waivers? So I guess, Rich, that's you, huh?
Yes, there is a template, and it's, if you go to the website, you'll see under loss prevention strategies, you go all the way to the bottom. Actually, they've got two templates, one for minor and one for adult. We've been working with the district, though, especially with this project that's coming up next Saturday, in developing something that would work. The Rotary Club of Honolulu has one for their projects, and I would hope that the other clubs would have their own as well. The waivers are really only there really for a temporary short period of time. After the project's over, if everybody goes home and they're not limping, you're okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right, great. Anybody else? Any other comments or questions you want to pose to any of these guys? Okay. Yeah, put it in the chat. I just want to, I'm going to kind of wind it up. We just got a few more minutes. But the reason that we're having this training is that prior to this year, we haven't really focused much of our training on boards. And so for the first time this year, we decided to make a concerted effort to put training out there for boards. Lorraine Davis is on the call today. I want to thank her, who kind of helped us to launch it out there in February. We did our first organized training for board members because we felt that that was a segment of our Rotarians that didn't really get a lot of training, and that we had hundreds of people sitting on boards that weren't even sure why what they were doing there and why they were there. And so part of Lorraine, and you can unmute yourself if you want to chat a little bit about it. Lorraine's mission was to just not be a seat warmer, and to try to encourage people to actively participate. So you want to talk a little bit about that, Lorraine?
Well, I think a lot of times people get invited to a board and it's prestigious. It looks good on your resume, but I don't think that they always understand the role that they have. And the speakers that you had today talked about, here's your responsibilities. Hopefully you don't scare them away, but the prestige goes with the responsibilities. And that's kind of where I was headed, is that they go, surprise, you're on a board, and you sit there and do nothing. And it also, your club suffer, any of the nonprofits that have boards where they don't know what they're doing, or they don't do anything, the organization suffers big time. So, when you want to talk about having a vibrant club and you want to have this, you want to have that, your board is the leadership. So you've got to have that leadership. The leadership needs to know what they're doing. Otherwise they can't sail that ship. So that's where I was headed. Great.
Thanks, Lorraine. And so at this moment of time throughout our district, we're encouraging all of the new leadership that's going to be coming in next year, the existing leadership that's there, to complete a strategic plan. And in our own club, Saltillo, we're about halfway through that process. But what we wanted to do is take that strategic plan, because I've been through a lot of clubs and helped them through that process. And then one of the first questions I ask them is, all right, do you have a strategic plan? And somebody usually says, yeah, it's sitting in a drawer. We did it 4 years ago, but nobody's pulled it out. We're not really sure what we're supposed to be doing with that. So developing a strategic plan is great, and that's the first step. But the responsibility for and the accountability for that plan lies squarely on the board. So once the strategic plan is done, then that plan has to get turned over to the board, And the board's obligation at that point is just to watch that plan, make sure that you're staying on it. If you're not, then you adjust and keep going. It's a dynamic document like a business plan, but that in my mind is one of the primary functions of a board, is to make sure that the club stays on track. So getting more training for the board is going to be important. We've made a commitment on the district level to provide at least quarterly board training similar to this. I know this was kind of a compressed version, but to put more training out there so that board members can feel more knowledgeable, they can become more active, they can become more engaged. So with that, I wanted to thank our speakers for the great job that they did today, for the information they put out so that all of us can benefit from that. We are recording. I'm going to stop it in a second. We'll post this up on our district website probably by Monday. So please encourage your board members that did not have a chance to attend today to review that. And if you guys would like to have some help, I know that I'm going to be helping some of the boards work through their strategic planning. All of us that are in the leadership of the district are happy to do that. So with that, thanks a lot. Thanks, Del. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Terry. And thank you, Dean, for all that information. So the next session that's coming after this is club administration. So if you want to hang on, we're going to start that in about 5 minutes. Okay, take care. Thanks a lot.